Hey everyone, welcome to the Brentwood Baptist Leadership Podcast. I'm Bill Ferrell, and this month, every episode is focused on leadership, and today we're talking about one-on-ones. Because one-on-ones are one of the most important ways that leaders build trust, they develop people, and stay connected to their team. This conversation is part of helping church leaders build healthier teams as we head toward the Elevate Church Conference on September 21 and 22. Today, I'm joined by my friend Darrel Girardier. We're going to be talking about one-on-one framework, and every leader needs one. So let's jump in. Darrel, welcome to the show, and let's start off with this one. Why are one-on-ones one of the most important rhythms, really, the leader can have?
That's a great question. I think part of the answer lies in the culture of where you're at. So if you're at a place that is if you're at a church that's a very fast-moving environment, they become really important to have moments to pause and to say like, hey, let's just have like almost a check-in from not just a status update of where we are on certain things we're trying to get done, but more like an emotional like, hey, it's more like soul care to a certain degree of like, hey, how are you feeling? How are things going? It communicates to that person, I care about you more than just the output of whatever ministry-wise that you're doing. I would say in some environments where you are maybe in a slower culture environment, that probably serves actually twofold. It's one, to pause and talk through those things you need to talk through, but also it's just a really important time to say like, hey, here's our mission, vision, goals, where are we at in certain key things that we've got going on. So it really, in my mind, depends on the culture, but most important thing is you have a moment to pause. So it gives you a moment as a leader to communicate, listen. It also lets you do some maybe mini course corrections that you got to do because as you and I've been in situations where you never want to be at a place where you got to do a major course correction with somebody that you're working with because you waited not to have the hard conversation that if you had what I would say micro hard conversations along the way or you could help mitigate some long-term issues down the road.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. It's these small corrections.
Yes.
You know, I was
right.
On a previous episode, I was talking with Brandon Hayes, and he brought up the fact that if something's 1 degree off of, center, and you correct it pretty quickly, you're good. But if you let this go on for days at a time, you're not 1 degree off anymore. You're 10 degrees off or 20 degrees off, and it just multiplies the damage control you have to do to get back on track.
And you end up doing a big disservice, not only to the church as a whole, but to that person. Like if I really love you and care about you, I want to take care of this now so we don't have to do this 6 months from now.
Yeah. And you sort of answered this right off the bat, Ed, but I like what you had to say. When we talk about the purpose of one-on-ones, it's more than just, hey, let me go through my checklist of business items that we need to cover.
Yes, it is. And you can get a little bit of the temperature, I would say, especially I can speak in the creative space, is like every person's one-on-one's going to be a bit different because it's going to be a little bit about like what you know about that person, what they value in that moment. Like I have some Enneagram 3 high D achiever types that I just know at the end of the day, they want to talk about, they want to get in, they want to get out. And honestly, I'm more than okay with that. But I think for some of the folks I work with, it's really important that we talk about all their parts of life that they have going on. And like, hey, tell me what's going on with the kids. Tell me this. Because one, I do truly care about them as a whole person. And they want to basically kind of let the whole person be on display in that moment. And I think that's I want to reward that. I want them to feel safe in that environment. That's the other thing is it creates a sense of safety that they know like sometimes for some folks, it's like, okay, I know I'm going to have a moment. I'm going to have a space and a place where I can talk about this. So it kind of emotionally lets them kind of put this in a little box and says, okay, when we get to that time in that space for that one-on-one, I'm going to be able to talk about that. And I think it's healthy for a lot of folks. They don't feel like this is hopeless because they're going to have a place to sit down and talk.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're tailoring these one-on-one conversations. I like that. That's something you can't do maybe in a group meeting, even if you're if you're having a conversation with one person. I just like if you have a person in your family or a relative or a friend. Those conversations are all tailored, and you're tailoring the one-on-ones. They don't all have exactly the same format. Maybe they have some of the same elements though. What are the elements that you're going to cover in every one-on-one?
I mean, I think there's the elements of like some of the elements are going to be is like, hey, what can I affirm? Like, what do I think? Like, hey, let's affirm this is what is working well.
Yeah.
And and then help me. And then the next thing I was like, what's working right? What do we think needs a course correction? And what I'm looking for is not so much what I think that what do they need my input in? What can I help them? What roadblocks can I remove from them? And also at the same time, hey, let me give you a little bit of a gift of self-awareness. Here's how people are seeing this. So let's think through this. So I'm looking to affirm them. I'm looking to help them navigate some tough issues that they may be walking through, maybe dealing with. So really, I'm trying to do those two things. And really, I start with the affirmation and I want to end with the affirmation and kind of have the middle be that, we may have to get into the valley of like, okay, this is the stuff we got to deal with. But I think my formula is the overarching is going to be, I want you to affirm. I want to dive into what we're going to really kind of need to kind of get at. But one of the big principles within that though is no surprises.
Okay.
One of the things I want to make very clear with people is that I don't want you to walk into a one-on-one and I don't want to drop something on you that you didn't know was coming. So one of the best practices for that is I keep a working Word document that's actually like a live Word document that we can edit in real time. You can do the same thing with Google Doc. And I basically have a running almost like monologue where I literally just say, hey, here's a thing. Here's all my thoughts on it. You share your thoughts on it. And we're having like almost an ongoing like big dialogue. So by the time we get to the meeting, I kind of know some background and then we kind of get all the facts out of the way. Now we can talk about the emotional aspect of it.
Yeah.
So that has been super helpful, especially for some of the team members who feel like, they really want to know the why. And so it kind of lets me kind of do some unpacking. Plus, I really think when you write out your thoughts versus speak your thoughts, I can really they can spend some more time articulating. I want them walking in, not on the fly having to articulate what their position is on something or whatever it is we're working on. Yeah. I want to give them a heads up to like, hey, think through these things. So when we sit down and have a conversation, it feels more well thought out and not thrown together.
Yeah. Okay. This is interesting. Yeah. So the expectation is that if something happens during the week and you're going to want to talk about it with employee number one, you're going to go into that Word doc, you're going to just say, hey, you're going to put it in as a topic or some observation. And then they are expected, I'm using the word expected, to be ready to talk about it or to even put a couple notes into that document.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we bring it up. So we have these ongoing things. Okay. And then I guess that also gives you the ability to look back at something. Hey, we talked about this because are you dating these?
Yes, so they're dated like there's a date at the top and then ideally you move the newest version to the very top of the document. So it just, you can look, it's a historical document of all of our conversations.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is when I go back and when we do a mid-year review, which is what we do here at Brentwood Baptist, I can pull that document up and I can say, hey, look, here's everything we talked about during the mid-year review. And it kind of gives me a pattern of like, okay, here are the things I can then turn around and use in my documentation when I want to brag on them or talk about things that we're working on. Yeah. It just makes it cleaner and easier. And it allows for them to feel like there's transparency about the dialogue that even if we disagree, which like I've got one coworker who I love dearly, and we had a big disagreement on something and we documented it. And I was like, hey, that's fine that we disagree philosophically on how to approach something.
Okay.
But in my mind, I think where the win is he feels heard. Like he wants to know, I completely hear you. I may disagree, but I completely hear where you're coming from.
Yeah. That must make like you said, we do 2 reviews, a mid-year and sort of an end of year. That must make those pretty easy to document.
They're a lot easier. They're so much easier to document when you do that. When you do the end of the year review, nothing should be a surprise. Yeah. The other thing that I think what it does is when somebody commits something to writing, I think there's a thought process by which you kind of go, I'm not going to be flippant. I've got to really think about this because this is going to be committed to something that's, it's not, doesn't live forever, but, and to a certain degree kind of it is kind of etched in stone. So it makes you be a little more thoughtful. And for me, somebody who can go, I can go super fast, it does force me to pause and sit down and go, okay, time out. Let me think about how I want to say this, how we want to approach this. Right. It forces me as a leader to put more thought behind how I'm going to approach something. So the fact I'm not flippant and I don't maybe just trip over my words or say something I shouldn't say. Yeah,
because words matter. And, I'll even coach people who are under me, if you're going to you have an email, you have to say something to somebody or you want to. I said, always be very careful what you put in writing because you already alluded to it. That lasts forever. I don't want to put anything in writing that I'm not comfortable having out on social media somewhere that, hey, Bill said this, because I want to be very careful about that. I'm much more willing to say something maybe difficult than to write it down because of that fact.
Yeah.
So I think you're onto something here. It's good to have situations, critical incidences. We've talked about those before, documented. But okay, I like what you're saying there. What kind of questions tend to lead to the most honest and helpful conversations that you have in one-on-ones?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a great question. I think the question, "What do you need from me?" is a really good one. Because so you say, if you say, "What do you need from me?" and then they give you a response to say, "Well, now, okay, based on that, what do you need from me?" And you could actually coach somebody to solve some of their problems by simply asking, "What do you need?"
Okay.
What's next? Hey, what do you think is next in that process? What do you think is next? And honestly, they kind of construct the solution themselves.
Yeah.
But I always want to hear like, "Hey, what do you need from me right now in this moment?" And sometimes they'll come back and say, "I just need an ear." That's completely understandable, and that's why I'm here. But I want to kind of guide them. The other question is the simple question, why? So like, or why do you think that is, or why is that? Because when I start asking that, there's an old philosophy from like, I think it's Toyota, where they would ask the question why 5 times in the processes. Because when you ask it 5 times, by the time you get to the 5th why, you really get to the heart of the matter. So if somebody's like, for instance, somebody's like going, "Hey, I'm really struggling getting VBS volunteers." Why do you think that is? Well, because nobody knows about this. Okay. Why do you think that is? Well, because of this. Well, why do you think that is? And then all of a sudden you get down to like the root issue. You go, okay, the issue is actually, we haven't done that thing right there. Okay. So what do you need from me to help you do that thing?
Okay.
So I think what can often happen in one-on-ones is that we kind of, as leaders, think our job is to download a past experience to them. But like, when I was in your shoes, here's what I did. And that's not a bad thing. Yeah. But if you can help them arrive at the solution themselves, you will teach them how to think. And then it becomes more of a coaching session and less of a mentoring download session.
Yeah.
And they walk away feeling, okay, wow, I now have a better tool set for how to approach the problem in the future.
Yeah. So leaders should think then of one-on-ones sort of in some different buckets. Maybe there's this care bucket, there's this development bucket, and there's the coaching piece.
Yes, there is.
Which, I think that you're onto something there with this whole idea of coaching and trying to help people figure things out for themselves, but also, let them develop that. Obviously, we have a whole coaching department here that we run, and we try to help people be better at that. How often should people be having these one-on-one meetings? What's your rhythm for that?
So again, this is where I think it's unique to the person.
Okay.
So there are some people that I see every single day, and we probably almost have a one-on-one probably almost every other day, like a 15, 20-minute one-on-one, because we are moving so quick on so many things that we are in constant and then so I bare minimum once a month. I would say bare minimum once a month.
That's the bare minimum.
Bare minimum for me is once a month. But for some folks, and this is again, and you'll get a feel for people like what they need. But I say and part of it, working in a church, we're on a 7-day cadence. Sunday, I always say Sunday's always coming. Sorry, folks, you can't get away from it. It's going to be there. And so I think you have to figure out the cadence for the person. I will say that generationally speaking, my younger team members need to have the one-on-ones more often than my older team members.
All right.
And a little, but I would also say, as I think that through, I have one team member, who's like, again, he and I dialogue probably every day. And so a one-on-ones, are they that important on a weekly basis? Yeah, we could probably get away with a month. The other thing is, by the way, it also depends on what you're working on. So for example, if you, so one of my direct reports is our stewardship minister. And if we were going to work on, say, like a stewardship campaign, we're going to go to weekly one-on-ones. Because as we get closer, we've got to how we are in sync. How are you feeling? Right, what do you need from me? So again, bare minimum a month. But depending on what you have going on, you may want to tighten that cadence up and go a little quicker and have a little more.
With these these shorter time frame ones when they're happening, are you calendaring those, or are you just leaving space in your calendar where people know, hey, Darrel's available from 2 to 3 most days, and if I need something, I'll hit him up then? How does that work on your calendar?
Well, Bill, that's a great question. Because here's the thing.
I just made it up. Thanks
it's great. Because here's the thing. People who work with me know that my life is literally on my calendar. Every 15 minutes is scheduled. And so what I have found is some of my team members need the freedom to drop in at any moment and have an impromptu one-on-one, and they've got permission to do that. So come on in, just do it, because I know that it could be a couple different things. It could be like I'm a bottleneck holding them up from getting something done. So yes, please come in and interrupt from the bottleneck, which I try to avoid to be. But I also know, emotionally speaking, they're just like the younger. I'm noticing that my younger team members kind of tend to like to be always on in terms of communication. They're like, hey, they just pop in my office. Hey, what do you think about this? Can we do this? Yeah, great. Let's sit down. Let's map that out. Let's go. And that's great. And I have some of my older team members who are like, can you get with can you work with my administrative assistant and we'll schedule some time together? I'm like, hey, that's totally cool if that's how we want to roll. So it really depends. I like to, I do think they need to be scheduled. So put them on the calendar, because mentally what that allows somebody to do is kind of go, you know what, I can park that. I know we're going to have a specific time to talk about that. So I think there's a mental aspect of it when you know it's going to occur, that you can kind of keep a running list and whatever tool you want to use of like, here's the things I want to talk about. And I think there's a little mental relief with that. But some team members, some people you're going to work with need that constant interaction, and they need like almost mini one-on-ones based off of the work they do. Maybe it's a little bit of security because they don't feel secure in what they're doing. So they need a little affirmation, the old like of, they want to circle back and go, hey, I'm doing a check, do report. I need to come back and need you to affirm what I'm doing is right. So again, I think it depends on the person. Yeah, it's good. So when you're finishing a mini one-on-one, do you tell them, hey, let's meet again tomorrow for 15 minutes, or let's meet in 2 days, I'll put it on the calendar? Is that how they know the expectation when you're planning? To a certain degree, what I have done is I have also said, hey, we will have a quick one-on-one, and then I'll real quickly take an email, write them an email, says, hey, real quick, I want to make sure that we're in agreement on what we just talked about. And it's not because I don't trust anybody. It's also for my mental sanity of going, what did we just talk about? What did we agree upon? And then I can send them that email. I said, hey, let me know if we need to follow up on that. I have done it with somebody where they just got overwhelmed, and I said, hey, here's the deal. Every Monday, we're going to do one-on-ones until the foreseeable future. Great. You're going to come in. We're going to triage your to-do list. And I'm going to coach you through on what I think the most important thing is. And so actually what I did was, for this person, I've done it before where I've done check-in, check-out. So for us, most our staff is Sunday through Thursday. So, but Monday's the first day in the office. So Monday's a check-in, Thursday afternoon is the check-out. Monday morning, give me your punch list. What do you got? Thursday, what'd you get done? All right, going into the weekend, here's what's important, here's what's not important. And what I wanted them to know was, my goal for that was, I want you to know that like if anything else comes and gets dumped on your list and it's not on what we talked about, you have freedom to say like, put it aside. And that kind of, especially because one of the things you got to remember is when you're living in a world where you may use Slack, Microsoft Teams, you got Outlook, and you have a tremendous amount of information being thrown at young adults who've never known how to navigate that much. They need they're going to need more guidance on how to navigate a high information environment. And so that's why, for me, those kind of mini one-on-ones or maybe a check-in, check-out are great, because you can coach them on how to navigate that much information coming in. Because sometimes it's like literally, I'll say, just show me your inbox. All right, let me help you triage your email.
This is great information for other leaders out there, because what you're getting at is that you're sort of coaching them up on how to prioritize, and you're letting them know what's important to you as their boss. And so I think anytime we can provide clarity in one-on-ones to our employees, man, that's a win, because sometimes they just get confused, or they have expectations that we never put on them, but they put on themselves. And so you're doing that regularly.
Completely. Yeah. I one of the things I try to coach on is like, hey, my first thing is, what do you know? Who needs to know? And have you told them? Like, we start with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you got trapped inside your brain right now that you got to get, get out, you have to get out the door. And then I have a note, because I plan my week out every Sunday afternoon, and I have a note that says, what are my expectations for this week for the people that I work with? And did I communicate those expectations? And then I go, man, I'm looking at my calendar. Yeah. I'm expecting these things by the end of the week. So I'll start drafting emails. Hey folks, here's what we're expecting this week. And that's part of and I'll put those in the one-on-ones. Just FYI, here's the expectation.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things we can do as leaders, especially those of us who've been serving in capacity for such a long time, we just assume that they're going to intuitively pick a lot of this stuff up, and they just simply don't. And so I think it's unfair to have that expectation.
Yeah. I was going to ask you this question about what you think are mistakes in one-on-ones. That's clearly one of them. Just assuming, hey, they're just going to pick this stuff up. What are other mistakes you see leaders make, or that you've personally made?
Oh gosh.
Ones. Made a mistake, Darrel?
Folks, that'd be part 2 of this podcast.
Yes.
One, surprises. Dropping surprises on people.
Okay.
I just think that is a faux pas. Now, look, let me be clear. There are things that you're kind of going, we need to have this conversation. I'm not going to put in a Word doc. I may put a little like, hey, we need to talk about this thing. Okay. And they may come to you and say, hey, what are we going to talk about? And say like, look, man, we're going to have a conversation about this. I want to be fair to you. So I don't want surprises, but as you and I are well aware, as you pointed out earlier, I can't put all the sensitive information in a Word doc for a hard conversation. So there's that.
Right.
I think the other thing, one of the mistakes we make is that we have conversations in one-on-ones that are actually supposed to be group conversations. So what happens is you as a team make a decision, and that person doesn't like the decision, but they wait for the one-on-one to say they disagree, but they didn't do it with the team. And so that is a big thing where you kind of go, so what you as a leader have to do is say, okay, what about our current environment made you feel like you could not share that with the team in that moment? And if they say, well, because so-and-so was like a timeout. So is it an issue with a person, issue with a process?
Yeah.
And you have to unpack that in that one-on-one. But what you want to do is you want to ensure that your one-on-ones are not conversations that should be happening together with the team, and or are conversations that should be happening with 2 other people besides yourself. In other words, somebody's coming to you with problems and you go, I always say like, hey, did you talk to them first? Nope. How about you talk to them first, come back to me, then we'll have the conversation. So the mistake you can make in one-on-ones, it's almost like you treat it like a Catholic confessional. People come in and just say like, I'm frustrated with so-and-so because they did this. And I'm like, I get that. And I want you to have a place where you can talk about your frustrations, but if you've done nothing to resolve that, then we need to start there first. And then once you've tried, and if you tried that and you failed, that's great. Here's what's going to happen next. It's not going to be a you and me conversation. It's going to be you, me, and that person, where all 3 of us are going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So again, the failure is treating group conversations as one-on-one conversations, treating what I would say hard conversations that 2 other individuals need to have together as part of your one-on-one. You got to avoid that. So to me, that's some of the biggest mistakes. I think the other mistake you can make is assuming, because everything on the outside is looking good, that you don't need the one-on-one because the work's being done on time. Ministry seems to be flowing well. They seem to be healthy. And that is actually the moment at most where I think you actually need to have that one-on-one. So I would say mistakes of one-on-ones is actually skipping them because everything seems to be fine, because that is the moment when I think the enemy attacks the most.
Just you're not on the same page.
Not the same page.
And I do think that one-on-ones take time. We both know that.
Yes.
And so it's almost easy to push it, but you're saying you need to avoid pushing it to another week and pushing it another week, because the next thing you know, you've gone 6 weeks and you haven't had a one-on-one, and then something happens. And I've had a couple of employees, one in particular, who often said, well, hey, I know you're busy. I didn't want to bother you, so let's just push the one-on-one. And I want to go, hey, listen, I'm not too busy for that. It's one of my primary tasks. Right. And to be able to give feedback and give these constant course corrections, feedback, both critical and positive, or just that's helpful in keeping everything flowing and working better. What if a leader who's listening today, has just not had one-on-one? They don't have a rhythm of that. They've not done that before. Where should they start? How should they kind of get the ball rolling on that?
I think the very simple thing you need to do is just start, but just one, got to put it on the calendar.
Okay.
Actually, first thing is do this, put it on the calendar, and that's going to force you, because you made a mental commitment to do it, to figure out how you're going to do it.
Okay.
Then once you do that, then I want you to ask yourself, I want you to get that person's job description. Take the job description and read through it and say, okay, we're just going to use this as our first guiding document of like, hey, this is what we've asked you to do. Do you, how do you feel? Do you feel overwhelmed? Is this accurate? Is this the stuff that we know we do once a year? Yeah. I would start with that as your baseline. And then I would, so that's the job part.
Yeah.
Start with the job description. That's easy, low hanging fruit.
Sure.
Then I would say, hey, what's a list of like 3 or 4 questions I can ask them about what's going on in life right now?
Okay. Yeah.
So you start with just the professional and the personal. Mm-hmm. Just start there.
Yeah.
I would start also by doing this is assume, take whatever time you think you're in need and add probably 25, 30% on top of that time, because the first, you know the drill. Yeah, the first time you do one, and sometimes they go quicker. Like, okay, you're a person who's going to give me very short answers. You're not going to give me a lot, but you just want to get up. Hey, that's cool. That's fine. Yeah. But then I've had the one-on-ones where we scheduled a 45-minute, and I'm sitting there thinking an hour and a half later, I'm like going, we're still going. Okay, so where the one-on-ones are going to be longer. Yeah. So give yourself a little more time than you probably think you need to do that. But I would start with that with one-on-ones is start by throw it on the calendar, which mentally commit you to do it, and then figure that out. I would also, a really good resource is a book by a lady named Claire Beth Johnson. Claire Johnson Hughes. She was the COO of the company Stripe, which handles all those payments that, all the stuff when you buy something online. She wrote a book called Scaling People, and it's basically a handbook on how you manage people. And in there, she has a whole thing dedicated to how do you do one-on-ones? And
really,
how do you have hard conversations? Yeah. What's the questions? And it's basically a how-to managerial manual. And the thing I like about it is it was written in the last 5 years. So it's got some stuff that I think is really good when you're dealing with like a Gen Z millennial. She kind of navigates some of that.
Sure. That's fantastic. Well, let's close with this question. And I've heard you talk about some of this already, but tell our listeners, how can healthy one-on-ones strengthen trust, communication, and long-term development across a team?
Well, I think what it does is it is one of the communication tools in your tool belt that lets you communicate 2 things to your folks. Is that one, you care about them, but you're also willing to correct them. As we know as leaders, if all you do is care, you're like a great grandfather who's got Werther original candies in their pocket, and they're just like handing them out, and everybody's like, he's never gonna call me out for, it's great. But then what happens is everything is lax and lazy, and it's not done to a good standard. If all you do is correct all day long, you are the person who just slaps everybody's hands for doing everything. And you always want to strike that middle. But one of the beautiful ways to do that is one-on-ones let you kind of do both. And kind of communicate that, hey, at the end of the day, I'm here. And so when you do that to the team, what can happen is the team has a sense of, like, I guess one of the ways that I think of it like this is what it does is if a team knows that you got somebody who needs correction, but you're never going to correct them, then the team starts to get the sense that this is not going to be a place for people who want to really be high achievers. So you're trying to, if you want an environment where you have high achievers, they need to get a sense of like, hey, we're going to demand a lot from you, but we're also going to care for you at the same time. Okay. And that creates a sense of trust on the team where the team knows like, hey, we're demanding the best of everybody, but we also care for you. And one-on-ones is just one of the tools in the toolkit to communicate that to folks. Yeah. Again, I'll go back to let's go to the generational thing real quick, because I think this kind of answers some of that question is, one of the things I've learned with a lot of our Gen Z and millennials is, for a whole host of reasons, they are a little bit later in life stage than probably Gen Z and boomers were. So if you're 25-year-old Gen Zer is different than a 25-year-old Gen Xer. There's a whole host of reasons for that. They've delayed a lot of life stages that a lot of us older people have done. So what happens is you actually have to do not just training of the job skills of like the actual technical thing I need you to do,
right.
like how to recruit volunteers, all the stuff that you got to do if you're working in a church environment. But it's also like, what does a day at work look like?
Yeah.
Why should you show up at this time? Why do we leave at this time? How do you do this? And so that requires a lot of one-on-one. And so that is why we have one-on-ones, is to you're going to have to understand that you're coaching them not just on professional, but on life in general. And one-on-ones allow you the opportunity to do that. And the other thing is, at the end of the day, you can hold your head high and say, you know what? If you do these right, and if somebody does walk away, which happens, in your heart, I did everything possible. I pulled every tool out of my toolkit. I met with these one-on-ones. They're documented. Here's everything we did for this person.
Sure.
And sometimes it doesn't work out, but at least in your heart, you did everything you could for that person.
Yeah. And I think with a kingdom mindset, we certainly try to have that here, is you're coaching people, developing them, having the one-on-ones. You're making them, hey, even if they go to another organization, there's nothing wrong with building up the kingdom. Where I always tell people, we're not in conversation or competition with others. We're trying to help them. And we have a nice leadership pipeline here that we developed through this. I think the one-on-ones is critical for that. And so it's been super helpful. Darrel, I want to thank you for the conversation today. I mean, healthy one-on-ones really do build healthier teams. If today's episode was helpful, we'd love for you to join us at the Elevate Church Conference on September 21st and 22nd of this year. You can learn more about it or register at elevatechurchconference.com. And finally, thanks for listening to the Brentwood Baptist Leadership Podcast. I'll see you next week.